right, good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee for Thursday, March 27th, 2025, otherwise known as Opening Day. All right. We will start with SB 901, Senator Augustine, Environment, Packaging, and Paper Products, Producer Responsibility Plans. If you have a panel or anything, feel free to bring them up.
There are others who I think were signed up, but it's just me on this one, Chair Corman. For myself. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee, your hat's making me smile. Senator Malcolm Augustine here on behalf of Senate Bill 901, Environment, Packaging, and Paper Products, Producer Responsibility Plans. Colleagues, I'll try not to be too long, but this bill is not cross-filed, so I'm going to walk through it just a little bit. It's a consensus.
Hey, Senator, would you mind just pulling the mic a little bit closer?
Yeah, sure.
So
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that, y'all. This is a consensus bill that, wow, that is loud, that incorporates EPR legislation passed by this committee in 2023 that required a needs assessment to provide the context to the development of the larger program that this brings forward here. It incorporated a stakeholder advisory council to provide recommendations on the formation of the program and a producer responsibility organization to manage that program. We started this piece of legislation from the third reader passed by the Senate Bill of 2023, and then used the advisory board's recommendations. We learned from other states, particularly leaning on Minnesota as a framework, but then we tailored it to our unique status here in Maryland and informed by the needs assessment, again, that this committee helped to bring forward in 2023, and then incorporated that with our existing statute and bring all those contributions together for the legislation that we have here before you today. Once we did that, we subsequently brought together and convened a work session of the stakeholders who are involved with this to, again, try to get as close to consensus as possible during session to iron out additional details. The larger policy goals of this are less waste in landfills, lower costs for taxpayers, more sustainable products, fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and cleaner communities. How it works? As I mentioned, first, we started out with a needs assessment that looked at the needs as we pertain to our recycling and our organic recycling and our reuse in our state. So that was a statewide needs assessment that we had completed, and that will be done every 10 years under the bill. And MDE will establish, secondarily to that, MDE will establish a list of the covered materials. And those covered materials are generally things that are accepted at your curbside recycling and composting. Think about the blue bins and those materials that you find that are in there. Those lists will inform various parts of the EPR program, including reimbursement rates and producer fees. Now, we incorporated into this eco-modulation of fees, and what that really pertains to is that if it's easier to recycle, then those fees will be lower. The producer fees will incentivize using materials and design attributes that reduce the environmental and human health impacts of the materials. Those things will go into this producer responsibility plan that will guide, and it's done every 5 years, that will draw heavily on the needs assessment and establish various requirements, including performance targets for specific materials, reimbursement processes, and rates for service providers. And then the reimbursement for service providers, this creates a mechanism that was proposed by the Producer Responsibility Organization, which again was something that we set up, and we're using the best practice organization to do just that, that will create those producer responsibility plans subject to the Maryland Department of Environment's approval. Then what will happen is funding will be phased into the program over the first 5 years of the program, so that reimbursement rates will be equivalent to 50% of the cost at the first phase, and that will then lever up to 90% cost recovery by July 1st of 2030. Reimbursements will cover capital improvements, collection, transportation to responsible end markets, and processing of covered products, contamination removal, reuse, and composting systems expansion, and related public education and outreach costs. service providers must register with the Maryland Department of the Environment to be eligible for reimbursement. That's just a pretty broad overview of what the program is. I will ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 901, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Senator. I just want to note we have guests from Economic Matters because this is dual referred, and I will call on Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for all your work on, environmental issues. So as you may know, this committee passed a bottle bill. It did get hung up in another committee for now, at least. I don't know what will happen with that, but we did put a lot of work into that and have a significant interest in that. Can that coexist with this bill, and how can they work together?
Thank you so much for that question, Delegate, because I failed to mention that is an element that we did put into the bill, specific language that says that this will in no way work against it, must harmonize with a single-use bottle bill if that were to come apart, so that those two things will work together. Similarly, it also does the same thing with other product stewardship things that we have. So the paint stewardship that we passed, this will work with that as well. It does not interrupt it. It allows for those things to continue to work and that they will work in harmony.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions? Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Augustine, always good to see you, and thank you for all the work you have put into this really important bill. So apparently, I guess there are 7 indicators. I don't know if you touched on that. I came in a minute or two late, being tracked in the bill. So the recycling needs assessment, does it provide baseline measurements for these indicators? And if it doesn't, how will producers or MDE be able to set goals, set realistic, I guess, targets?
So the needs assessment does include a baseline that establishes the baseline for where we stand on each of the different metrics. Then it will be the responsibility of the producer responsibility organization to incorporate when working with the producers to create their plans, to incorporate each of those elements into each one of the plans that then would be approved by MDE, and that would then inform the program going forward.
Okay. And then a second question, Mr. Chair. So there are not these statutory targets in the EPR for the packaging bill. So is it accurate? Am I understanding right that it's the packaging producers that are proposing the targets and not the Maryland Department of Environment?
The way that this is structured, and we have, as I said, we've tried to take best practices from the others that have worked on this across the country, is that it will be incorporated into the plan itself, not into the statute, and that we will be looking for improvement, continuous improvement within those plans themselves that are created by the producer responsibility organization, but they are done in concert with the producer and also understanding what happens on the service providers who the cost, which is our counties, our MRFs and haulers and stuff like that, all of that being incorporated into that process, but it is at the plan level and not in statute. And this was obviously some compromises. These things are always the way that they are. It's a policy decision, a compromise that we came to in order to, if you see, there's a real strong consensus across the board for this piece of legislation.
Okay. And last question, quick, Mr. Chair, is about recycled content. That is not in here. Was that a compromise as well?
Again, recycled content is not in the statute, but it is to be incorporated into the plan. So all of that is to be a part of the plan, and that those plans would then be reviewed and approved by MDE. So it's not that we aren't cognizant of it and wanting to do better on that. It's just not putting it in the statute itself.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Senator, thank you very much. I'm reading the fiscal note, maybe you can help me a bit. And it says, although the cost to develop the plans likely vary by jurisdiction, to the extent that a local jurisdiction must hire a consultant to develop the plan, local expenditures are likely increase by at least $100,000 and potentially significantly more. MACO estimates the total cost to develop the feasibility plan could total hundreds of thousands of dollars depending upon the county. MACO also notes that the December 1st, 2025 deadline will be challenging to meet to the extent that the plans must be updated in the future. Local expenditures may increase in future years as well. So when we live in the rural counties, we don't always have pickup services, so we just go to single stream recycling. How will those costs affect the rural counties, since this will be sort of an unfunded mandate?
Senator, before you answer that, I just want to explain with the fiscal note. We don't have the third
gonna
reader
say
Senate
that.
bill fiscal note yet.
Yeah.
They're working on it. Fiscal notes, this is just a tough time of year, so we will definitely have that before we vote, if we vote. When we vote, I don't want to scare you, Senator. So I want you to answer, but just recognize we're going to get an updated
Okay,
fiscal note.
thank you.
Delegate Morgan, that was going to be the first thing that I was going to say. I was a little not, at this point, I don't know what to say about the fiscal note, because the fiscal note refers to the bill as introduced and not the bill where we are right now. So I'll start with that. I'll also just share with you that MACO is in full support of this piece of legislation because the way that it is organized is we are moving the costs no matter the way it's done. So we also adjust for that, different ways that people receive this recycling. What it does is it says that what we want to do is we want to move those costs out of the jurisdiction and to make sure that they're more up into the brands themselves. And so that it will not, the intent and the way it's organized and the way that MDE would approve it, it won't be providing, it won't cost them more, because we also take administrative costs as a part of cost that is to be reimbursable for this by the PRO. So the brands have to pay a fee to join the producer responsibility organization, and then on top of that, there are those fees associated with those costs. So the intent of legislation is to then get them incentivized to have less cost by virtue of them being a part of it, to provide some relief for us in our localities, which is really at the core of this piece of legislation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Delegate Poffo sitting in Delegate Holmes' seat.
Because I'm from the 23rd district, we get to sit in each other's seats. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, colleagues on the Environment and Transportation Committee, good to see you from ECM. Senator, good to see you as always. Quick question, just because obviously there's a lot of interest in this bill and we've been following this in economic matters. When you originally introduced the bill, you had a list of exemptions, and in there was regulated dietary supplements at one point. Can you talk to me about, it's not in the version that's on this side anymore, and I assume that was taken out by the Senate. Can you talk to me about why that was and your personal feelings if we decided, at least in economic matters I could speak for, to put that back into the bill?
Yeah, my understanding is that if it was the way it is presented, there is existing statute from 2023 where we created exemptions that wouldn't be in the bill, but that would have already been incorporated into as agreements that were made. It is the intent that it be in there, and my understanding from working with committee counsel that those exemptions are in fact a part of it, which would include those dietary supplements, because those are agreements that we made.
Right.
And so that is absolutely the intent.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Senator. I wanted to ask, because it has come up certainly in this committee, and forgive me if you did say this and I missed this. Tell me how this program works for jurisdictions that do not recycle in general.
So the way that it works for jurisdictions that do not recycle, one, it creates a framework to help to get infrastructure in order to be able to do so by virtue of us having a collection of these fees in order to do that. And of course, it also does harmonize if they do have like the where you go personally and fill them up yourself, like where they're not doing it, but it does allow for that to be incorporated into the larger plan in order to allow them to still participate. If the the products themselves, it's the consideration is on their recyclability as far as the costs go across the state as a whole. Those things that, like, say, are not recyclable, like they just got to go straight to the landfill by the way they are designed and things like that, then that will have a higher fee associated with that because they would go to a place like landfill. But the way this is set up, we seek to use the infrastructure that we have and then also provide more resources to be able to strengthen what we currently have. So the desire would be to get them some infrastructure so that we're able to increase our number.
So by the brands paying in and then local jurisdictions having to create their plans, this would essentially respectfully force those who essentially don't have, for instance, a recycling infrastructure of recycling at all to create those plans with some of the funding mechanisms that are being paid into the program to create the framework and then actually be able to contribute to this kind of whole plan.
I wouldn't say that they would be forced. I wouldn't say that they would be forced. Whatever their existing mechanisms are.
But if I'm saying if they don't have mechanisms at all, so their mechanisms, for instance, is trash. So they don't have any recycling. All of their stuff either goes to an incinerator or goes to a landfill.
Right. Vice Chair Boyce, I don't have a great answer for you on that. I'm willing to look into that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any further questions for the bill sponsor? Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank
Get
you.
back there and vote all those HPs out of your committee. We will call up John Richard, Flexible Packaging Association, Tiffany Harvey, Maryland, Delaware, DC Beverage Association, Andrew Hackman, Ameripen, and Drew Fells, McCormick and Company, all favorable.
Live. All right. Thank you, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. FPA is proud to offer testimony in support of Maryland's EPR program. We are based out of Annapolis, but we represent manufacturers of flexible packaging throughout the United States. Our packaging happens to be made out of paper, aluminum, and plastic, really critical to the food and medical systems, particularly for sterile packaging and for keeping food fresh. If you've been to the grocery store or the doctor's office lately, you've been using our packaging. In 2023, we did support the needs assessment version of this bill. We are happy to say that we support the current results of the needs assessment. It used real-world data to estimate an increase from an effective 0% recycling rate for flexibles in the state of Maryland to 9%, which we believe is very achievable. There are some gaps in the needs assessment data for flexibles, but we do look forward to providing the Department of the Environment with data on final implementation. Thank you.
I'm going to go. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of this honorable committee, as well as members of ECM as well. My name is Tiffany Harvey, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland, Delaware, DC Beverage Association. We urge a favorable report from these committees on Senate Bill 901. We think that this bill shares similarities with some of the states that have passed favorable EPR laws, like Minnesota, which was mentioned by the bill sponsor when he spoke. And we think it carries some best practices from those states. Our association, we've been participatory in the advisory council that this committee passed back in 2023. We were part of that process with some of the other folks here at the table. And we think by and large, what this program would be a benefit to recycling in the state of Maryland. And so for those reasons, we would support that. We did include in our testimony some additional best practices that we've seen and like to see. And with that, we will urge a favorable report in this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Corman, Vice Chairman Boyce, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Drew Fells. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for McCormick and Company. For more than 135 years, McCormick has made Maryland its home in Baltimore. I'm sure you've had a chance to enjoy many of our lovely brands from McCormick's, Frank's, French's, and Maryland favorite Old Bay. We have been long supportive of an EPR program in the state of Maryland. Maryland. We supported SB 222 in 2023 and now support SB 901 and ask for favorable reporting out of this committee and economic matters as well. Building off of SB 222, which established an advisory council, contracted the Producer Responsibility Organization, CAA, Circular Action Alliance, and issued a needs assessment to understand and improve the opportunities for the recycling system in the state. McCormick's Chief Sustainability Officer, Micah Corafor, was the co-chair of the advisory board, advisory council, which brought together interested stakeholders and those impacted to produce a set of recommendations which are well represented in the latest draft of this legislation. We want to thank Senator Augustine and members of the Senate and that committee and other stakeholders who helped to get the bill to where it is today. We are glad to see the alignment with the Minnesota law, which is probably one of the stronger ones that we've seen out of those states. Really believe in the consistency within the definition of producer, the shared responsibility that the senator had mentioned. We believe the strong structure of the Producer Responsibility Organization will help improve Maryland's recycling system here. Thank you.
Afternoon, Chair Corman, members of the committee. My name is Andy Hackman. I'm here on behalf of Ameripen, which represents the entire packaging supply chain. So we make materials that go into all the consumer goods that you buy every day, from metal to glass to paper and beyond. And the brands that you use in your homes, from cereal to spices to cleaning products, et cetera. And then waste management and some of the companies that do waste services in that sector are also members of Ameripen. So we span the whole spectrum of the packaging supply chain. In terms of this legislation, it has been a lot of hard work out of Senator Augustine for the last 3 years to get us to the point that we are unequivocally in favor of moving this legislation forward. It's only the second time that the Ameripen Board of Directors has been able to vote and move into that position. It represents a lot of compromise that happened in Minnesota last year, in particular, getting definitions right, assuring that the process is transparent and that all stakeholders will see the goals that are developed, and that it'll go through the advisory council, and MDE will have the ability to say yes or no, whether or not those goals are appropriate. And does have the funding formula that we believe has everybody with a vested interest in making sure that the system works, that recycling is improving here in the state. And is a process that stakeholders hopefully can get behind. With regard to one of the questions that was raised earlier in terms of forcing municipalities in here, I went back through the bill just quickly. I think the short answer is that there is funding that will be available for municipalities to participate in the program if they can establish recycling services. There's incentive for the Producer Responsibility Organization to help those communities build and create recycling. But I don't see any way that it forces them to assume a new cost. And because producers are paying for that cost with regard to recycling, that's something we think could be supported without adding additional costs. So again, we recommend for this committee and for Economic Matters to give the bill a favorable report, and really appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this legislation.
Great, thank you all. Are there any questions for this panel? Okay. We'll call up favorable amendment testimony. Sarah Price, Maryland Retailers Alliance; Allison Kustik, the Association of Plastic Recyclers; Scott DeFife, Glass Packaging Institute; and Jeremy D. Baker, Maryland Department of the Environment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and honorable committee members. Sarah Price on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Alliance. We did have some concerns about the bill when it was initially introduced without the benefit of having the needs assessment available or the recommendations from the advisory council. And we do feel that the bill has moved rather quickly since those resources became available just a few short weeks ago. But we do appreciate the direction that it has taken because the retail industry generally does prefer the Minnesota model. We respectfully have 3 recommendations on the bill, the first of which has already been somewhat addressed. So I would thank the sponsor for answering the question about dietary supplements because that was one of our initial recommendations, was to put that back in the legislation. So happy to hear that that may not be an issue anymore. We would also recommend that compliance with existing regulations regarding greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets would be satisfactory for the reduction goal requirements that would be required in producer plans. And we would thirdly ask that the amended definition of recycling not be interpreted as to exclude current practices regarding alternative recycling and the use of energy or fuel byproducts as part of existing recycling techniques. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. I'm Allison Kustick, State Government Relations Manager for the Association of Plastic Recyclers, APR. I'm here in a favorable with amendments position on the bill. APR members are the companies that recycle more than 5 billion pounds of plastic packaging each year, including the plastic items collected from Maryland households. And our goal is simple. We want to recycle more plastic to reduce waste, stimulate local economies, and strengthen domestic manufacturing. EPR policies for packaging and paper products are the most proven effective solutions to improve plastics recycling and have been widely adopted across Europe and Canada, and in the last 5 years, several US states. And at its core, recycling is a business, and we want to grow recycling businesses, not landfills. EPR policies supply the necessary funding and infrastructure to collect the plastics that APR businesses recycle. APR's member companies have the existing operational capacity to recycle more plastics today, but we need to collect more recyclable plastics from households. Maryland landfills thousands of plastics that could be recycled, and that's a missed opportunity to collect valuable feedstock to support domestic manufacturing. APR supported the EPR bills passed in Colorado and Minnesota, and we are currently engaged in the implementation efforts in California and Oregon, and we're grateful for the work of Senator Augustine and the EPR Advisory Council to craft this bill for Maryland. Maryland can look to states that have gone before and implement the lessons we have learned from those, and to that end, we request amendments to strengthen SB 901 and harmonize it with other states. In particular, we have concerns with the current reference to, quote, responsible end markets and their definition. We would prefer the use of the term responsible market to accurately capture the role of our members, the reclaimers, in the overall recycling systems, and we request amendments to that definition to accurately capture it. We look forward to working with the sponsor on these requested amendments. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee, and also the ECM committee that are here. I am Scott DeFife. I'm the president of the Glass Packaging Institute. We represent the glass container manufacturers and glass recyclers in North America. And we are also here favorable with some suggested amendments. My first note is going to be that we appreciate very much the inclusion of some language that allows for and accounts for the potential future bottle deposit return system, even though it is not a bill such as HB 232, which the committee has passed before, then we support. And we're not necessarily asking you to consider including that as an amendment into the EPR bill. But should you want to consider some of that, I would at least also, as a member of the advisory board, I'm also on the advisory board that was created to help advise on this, I would at least give a nod to the advisory board to study how those two systems might work together going forward in the future as part of the advisory board instructions that are included in this bill. My other 3 points, I'm going to focus on something that is in the bill that is detailed coming out of the third reader in the Senate on reimbursement rates for service providers. Just as all packaging material is not the same, not all service providers are the same. Some have invested, some have not. Some produce quality material, some do not produce as much quality material going forward. The quality of the material impacts tremendously the value of the commodity and the end markets that it can reach. I would suggest a little bit of additional language and clarity that quality and reasonable equipment investments get reimbursed and give the PRO and the producers some ability to negotiate with the service providers on the equipment, the cost of the equipment, and the quality of the material that's going to come out of their facilities. I'll also just very quickly add, there is a reference on curbside collection on the list in Section 9, 2508. that I think might be helped if you include for the more rural counties, community drop-off is not necessarily listed. It's only a curbside or not curbside, and I think there are some other modalities that could be addressed in the collection.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, Jeremy D. Baker on behalf of the Department of the Environment, here in support of SB 901 with just one small amendment. First, the department wants to thank the sponsor of the bill for all his work on this issue and for engaging in such a robust stakeholder process to reach consensus. The bill aligns with both the recommendations of the EPR Advisory Council as well as the department's recycling needs assessment that was released earlier this year. The department, again, is asking for just one small amendment. On page 25 of the bill, you'll see that, as currently written, we can only recoup our expenses for developing and implementing regulations in calendar year 2026. We would like this to be changed to as necessary for two reasons. First, with the bill's effective date being June 1st, we would like to hit the ground running in implementation and getting the resources to do so. And second, if we had to revisit these regulations at another time, we would like to do that without the need to come before you again with another bill. And so ultimately, this bill aligns with our recycling goals and will help to address our landfill capacity issues. And accordingly, the department asked for a favorable with amendments report. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any questions for this panel? Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for being favorable with amendments. It's clear that you want to work through this. Sarah, I want to go back to, you asked about 3 amendments. You talked about dietary supplements, which I think is potentially taken care of. You talked about compliance with greenhouse gas reduction. And then you talked about the recycling definition. Can you go just very briefly into the last 2?
Sure. So we have had several members express concerns about the inclusion of greenhouse gas reduction goals being included in producer plans. It is my understanding that this has been traditionally included in several other states. But knowing that Maryland has passed the Climate Solutions Now Act, knowing that this committee is soon to consider Better Buildings Act, and generally knowing that Maryland does pay very close attention to emissions reductions goals and has some pretty strong goals in that direction, we would generally recommend that if a business is demonstrating compliance with those existing regulations, that be satisfactory to also meet the requirements in the plan.
There's some co-mingling there.
Yes.
Okay. And then the third one?
So the definition of recycling was updated through the amendments process, and it explicitly excludes incineration or energy or fuel production as recycling techniques. We had a question or two about whether the exclusion of incineration could be used to prohibit the use of advanced recycling techniques. When a bill about that specifically has come up in front of this committee, I have traditionally opposed it on behalf of Maryland retailers, primarily because it is not actually considered incineration, but proponents for its prohibition will often refer to it as incineration. So we had some questions about whether that would be taken in that direction. And then it is my understanding that some traditional recycling techniques may produce energy or fuel as a byproduct, which is then used to power that facility. And we would just want to make sure that that existing process be allowed to continue.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Stott, you're good? Okay. Any additional questions for this panel? Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of you for your involvement in this important issue and your feedback. This is a question for the woman from the plastics recycling industry. I was just curious, is it too soon to say, kind of looking down the road, what your plastic packaging reduction targets might look like? Have you already had to do that in like Minnesota and elsewhere? Can you say just roughly?
So thanks for asking, I appreciate it. I represent the companies that process the the products that are put into the recycling bin, and then they send them through their facilities, wash them, grind them, and then resell them as pellets or flakes. So most of our core members aren't involved in the production of the packaging, so that's probably better answered by someone else. I'm sorry, I can't be more helpful there.
Okay, and maybe I could get with you offline and find out who those folks are.
Sure, yes, I can probably refer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Terrific. All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you all. We have favorable amendment virtual testimony. We'll start with Peter Blair from Just Zero.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Peter Blair. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director with Just Zero. We're an environmental nonprofit advocacy organization that works to implement proven and effective solutions that reduce waste, improve recycling, and benefit the environment. We strongly support the development of an EPR for packaging program in Maryland, and we thank Senator Augustine for the incredible work he's done to bring together all the stakeholders and address a lot of the concerns. We do have a couple amendments we are requesting. First, we recommend that the bill be amended to clarify what performance goals the department is supposed to adopt. There is language in the bill that does empower the department to adopt statewide performance goals, which is great. However, the language is broad and vague. We believe this is going to create needless debate during the rulemaking process. These rulemakings are very complicated. They're big processes. The clearer you can be in the statute, the better. We recommend you look at Minnesota and Maine, which had explicit performance goals in the statute, which the department was supposed to adopt. Second, dealing with the enforcement of the performance goals, we think there needs to be some revision. The language regarding the performance goals only addresses enforcement of the goals set by the PRO, not the department. We think this is an oversight. The goals set by the department really should be a measure for tracking program performance, and in order to do that, you need them to be enforceable. And then with the enforcement language, we also think that most of it is permissive. If the performance goals are missed, there's language saying the department can take action. There can be a revision to the PRO plan. We think this should be a mandatory action. If the goal is not met, the PRO should be looking to see what can be done, proposing a new performance plan that says how they're going to get back on track. And we think there should be fee increases to show the actions that they're proposing will be funded. We have a couple other minor amendments. All of our amendments, we've included draft language in our testimony. Thank you for your time. We look forward to working with you on this bill.
Thank you very much. We'll turn to Susan Bush for the Circular Action Alliance.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today on SB 901. Appreciate it. I'm hoping you can hear me. Great thanks to also to Senator Augustine for all of his hard work on getting this bill to where we are today. My name is Susan Bush, and I'm here today representing the Circular Action Alliance, a nonprofit U.S. producer responsibility organization, or PRO, dedicated to implementing effective extended producer responsibility EPR laws for packaging and paper. I'm here to report favorable with amendments. We are the selected PRO representative on the Maryland Advisory Council and the only organization approved to implement U.S. EPR laws for packaging and paper. And based on our experience, we've identified three primary concerns that with proper approach in this legislation could potentially ensure a successful program in Maryland. First of all, there are some requirements in the proposed bill that we believe will increase the administrative burden and cost for producers and the PRO and potentially others without any additional benefit. These include the measurement of greenhouse gas emissions and the measurement of the toxicity of packaging. These are concepts that are challenging to define and would increase reporting, tracking, and verification burdens with minimal benefit. Secondly, reusable and refillable packaging is not well defined in the bill, in our opinion, and the requirements of the PRO with regard to these materials is not clear. So without clarity, we're just concerned that there could be unintended consequences regarding these material types. Historically, EPR for packaging in North America in particular has been limited to single-use packaging. So again, not against it, but would like to see it more clearly defined. And thirdly, we're concerned that exempting certain covered materials from having to achieve performance targets will create additional administrative burden. This could potentially cause the need to double the number of reporting categories, for example, because a producer would have to report not only the type of packaging, but also what it is used for to flag those exempted materials. So again, thank you, and we look forward to working with you for a successful EPR program in Maryland.
Okay, we'll turn to Alex Trulove, Biodegradable Products Institute.
Hi there. Thank you, Chairman Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee. Appreciate the time. My name is Alex Trulove. I'm with BPI, the Biodegradable Products Institute, testifying in support of 901 with amendments. BPI is North America's foremost organization for the circular bioeconomy. We verified the performance and safety of tens of thousands of compostable products, from food scrap collection bags to produce stickers to coffee cups, many products that many of you have probably held. First, we sincerely appreciate the many amendments that have been made already to this bill to strengthen definitions and provide operational clarity, some things that folks have already mentioned. But with that said, we want to ensure that the fees are proportional to the size of the packaging stream. So in our case, compostable products are a pretty small fraction of the overall packaging marketplace. They're also a small fraction of their own compost stream. Most compost streams are filled with food waste and yard waste, as it should be, and a small proportion of compostable packaging. There's also less compost collection in Maryland compared to recycling. So all of the costs that are needed to fill up that infrastructure could create problems in the sense that requiring universal collection, as this bill might be doing, for compostable products would then place an exorbitantly high per product fee on the small amount of packaging. So what we're asking for is ensuring that fees are proportional to other packaging, so that compostable fees and recyclable fees are relatively similar, even if that means a smaller pot of money, and that can go towards targeted funding, but at least ensures that there's a fair marketplace and that there's encouraging of using different kinds of products in appropriate applications. That sort of proportional funding is expressed in other versions of state EPR bills, so this is not a new concept, and then that also creates balance within the system and good incentives. So we've articulated some of those comments in writing. Hopefully that's clear, and with some small tweaks, we'd be happy to support this bill without any reservations. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for these virtual witnesses? Okay, we have unfavorable testimony. John McLucky, Consumer Healthcare Products Association, and Fraser Willman, American Forest and Paper Association.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Chair Corman, and members of the committee. My name is Fraser Willman with the American Forest and Paper Association. Thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns on Senate Bill 901.
Would you mind just pulling the mic a little closer so we can hear you?
Absolutely. My apologies.
Thank you.
So my name is Fraser Willman with the American Forest and Paper Association. Thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns with Senate Bill 901. EPR policies typically target hazardous or hard to recycle materials, and that is not the case for paper. The paper industry recycles nearly 60% more paper today than in 1990. In 2023, the U.S. recycled between 65 and 69% of paper and 71 and 76% of cardboard. Recycling is integrated into our business. Our members operate over 100 material recovery facilities, and 80% of paper mills use recycled fiber, providing essential end markets. We're investing $7 billion from 2019 through 2025 to expand recycled fiber capacity by more than 9 million tons. SB 222 established a process for informed policymaking, including a needs assessment due last July and a robust advisory council input. Our testimony includes a timeline comparing SB 222's intended process with what is played out in practice. We urge the committee to review it as it shows missed opportunities for deliberate evaluation and how at times statutorily required steps occurred in reverse order. No state that has passed such legislation has fully implemented EPR. Oregon's program launches this July, offering Maryland a rare chance to learn from best practices and challenges. Other states have experienced setbacks. California, for example, recently restarted its regulatory development at the governor's request due to concerns about costs to businesses and consumers. The bill applies a one-size-fits-all approach that does not reflect paper's recycling success and risks having our industry subsidize lower-performing materials while limiting our industry's capacity for targeted investment. Paper products, initially excluded, are now inconsistently included, expanding the program into the commercial stream, which is inappropriate based on advisory council recommendations and stakeholder feedback. The producer hierarchy for paper products could misplace responsibility on upstream manufacturers who do not control branding or distribution of products ultimately found in the bin. Our testimony provides amendments to address these issues, and we appreciate consideration. Thank you so much.
So you're actually favorable with the amendment, is that?
Broadly, our organization is opposed, and there are other changes that we would like to see to the legislation, but recognizing where it is. So that is the broad opposed position, but we do want to bring some solutions to the table, so those are our amendments.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Corman, distinguished members of the committee. My name is Robbie McLucky, and I work for the Consumer Healthcare Products Association. We represent the manufacturers of over-the-counter medicine, medical devices, and dietary supplements. I'd also like to add I'm a proud lifelong resident of Frederick County. First, before I get into the opposition testimony, I want to thank Senator Augustine for his time and his hard work on this bill. We've actually been able to talk with his office in the past and came to an agreement where the exemption for dietary supplements, and that's the reason why I'm here today to oppose, which was in the bill as introduced. And as it went through the committee process, it looks like exemption language possibly from a different state was inserted in its place, where the exemptions were changed a bit, and dietary supplements broadly are no longer part of that exemption. So I just want to thank again the senator for his work on this bill and being open to our considerations. Dietary supplement packaging differs from other product packaging as it's required to adhere to strict federal standards. It's not as easy for manufacturers of these products to reduce the amount of packaging used in these products or to incorporate post-consumer recycled content in there due to the federal regulations. Somebody on the committee, I think a delegate mentioned the eco-modulation process within the bill. It's not quite as easy for these companies to reformulate due to the high standards the federal government sets for the design and the production of this packaging. Several states appropriately recognize the unique nature of dietary supplement packaging by exempting it from their EPR packaging laws or their post-consumer recycling content laws, including Colorado and New Jersey and Washington State. And several states that are considering similar EPR bills this year also exempt dietary supplement packaging. States that come to mind include New York and Massachusetts. Even the bill, like I said before, earlier this year, as introduced, did exempt these products from the scope of the legislation. So in conclusion, FDA's regulations have been in place for 30 years, ensuring consumer safety while maintaining product integrity. So we ask for the reinstatement of that exemption. Thank you for your time.
Also favorable with amendments?
Well, in a general sense, we've engaged on EPR bills across the country throughout the past couple of years. We've never taken a support position, but we are very, very happy to move to a position of neutral if the amendment was adopted.
All right, Delegate Boafo sitting in Delegate Holmes' seat.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to follow up on what you just said. Obviously, this committee has been doing its work over the last year, and Senator, for a couple years on trying to get this bill through. And I think there's something to be said before this bill crosses over into ECM. I want to spare you from our very calm committee. But one of the things I want to focus on is that it sounds like you guys are both favorable with amendments. And I'll address both of your concerns at once, but I mean, even the retailers are here in support, which is a very low bar, but that says something about where we are. Sorry, it's a high bar, you're right. It says something about this legislation and its importance. And so, the gentleman who spoke about newspapers, if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we exempt newspapers in the Senate?
That is correct.
Okay, so what's the exact opposition or amendment that you're actually seeking? Because I only heard a mention about newspapers.
So I'll highlight, AFMPA represents manufacturers of all paper products, not just newspapers. And part of the reason I would say about on the opposition is, like I said, no state has implemented EPR. And so recognizing the work that our industry has done voluntarily, recognizing the value proposition of using recovered fiber to make new products at great time and investment, recognizing that nothing has been implemented yet, we do see this as a threat to the investments that we've made. So until we get to July of this year, we won't know if the proof is in the pudding, as it were, for EPR. And I think that will have a determining factor on where we stand on EPR going forward. As it relates to the newspapers, as manufacturers of paper products, our concern is that we will make paper, we'll send it in on, you have unprinted paper in big reams that gets sent, and we will sell it, and we will always know what it is ultimately going to be used for. So we can't say with strong determination that, yes, that ream of paper is going to be going to a newspaper which will be exempted, or to a publisher which is not.
Okay, with all due respect, you didn't really answer the question. So outside of newspapers, if we were to put amendments in, what else would you guys like to see exempt?
In terms of other things, not so much exemptions, but in terms of things that we would like to see in EPR in general, on our concern about paper subsidizing other materials, we would like to see language that provides for no cross-material subsidization. Essentially, everyone pays their own way for their improvements. And additionally, dovetailing off of that, the concept of off-ramps, which is included in California's EPR system, where after you've established the program goals, if materials have achieved those program goals, they are off-ramped from the program.
Okay, and Robbie, is it? Robert?
yes.
You mentioned something that I was just speaking about earlier with the favorable testimony to the senator regarding regulated dietary supplements, which in our committee, if we've ever sat in there, talks a lot about these products and their usage, et cetera, et cetera. And so essentially, if we were to put what was back in the Senate bill, you would be fine with this bill in totality?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sounds like favorable amendments. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. We do have informational testimony virtually from Greg Costa, Consumer Brands Association.
Hi, my name is Greg Costa with the Consumer Brands Association. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. We remain neutral on this legislation, but I kind of want to associate Consumer Brands Association with the amendments requested by the Maryland Retailers Association. We do think that there could be a little sharpening of the recycling definition, and we are concerned about the greenhouse gas provision in the bill and think that it is not necessarily in keeping with the goals of the legislation, and think that under existing Maryland law covering greenhouse gases, this can all be addressed. So we'd like to see those couple of amendments. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, sir. Any questions? Okay, that concludes the bill here on SB 901. Do we have Naomi from Senator Feldman's office here? SB 109, Maryland Public Ethics Law, School Boards Compliance Certification. Go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Naomi Nicholas, and I'm an intern for Senator Brian Feldman. I'm here today on behalf of the senator who was unable to attend this hearing. I'm honored to present Senate Bill 109, Maryland Public Ethics Law, School Boards Compliance Certification. Currently, local governments are required to submit an annual certification to the State Ethics Commission that they are in compliance with state ethics laws and the Commission's regulations regarding conflicts of interest and financial disclosures. However, county boards of education are currently not required to submit an annual certification. This bill will close that loophole and add the county boards to the code, including the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. This bill has already passed unanimously out of the Senate committee and the full Senate. I request a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the bill? Okay, great job. Thank you. Do we have someone here from Senator McKay's office?
Not from his office, but testimony. Is he not in? Or was he supposed to be here?
Yeah, I understand as a witness, but you usually have a bill sponsor. There's on the bill or his staff. How about for Chair Smith? Senator Simon Eyre? SB 281, Transportation Equality for Services Members Act.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Kara Contino on behalf of Senator Simon Eyre to present Senate Bill 281, which is identical to House Bill 475, which you passed already out of this committee and out of the House this session. And with that, I would request a favorable report.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for Senator Rosapep? Senator King?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. SB 950, Motor Vehicles, Reckless, Negligent, and Aggressive Driving, Sergeant Patrick Kepacht.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Patty Horton for Senator King. Senate Bill 590 is an exact cross-file of House Bill 744, which unanimously passed this committee in the full House of Delegates. So on behalf of Senator King, I respectfully request a favorable report.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. We'll turn to SB 915, Baltimore County Vehicle Laws, Private Roadways, and Residential Communities. They're bringing in a ringer, the Speaker Pro Tem, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. This bill, SB 915, is cross-filed to House Bill, the number for which is escaping me right now, but a bill I put in which would, as amended, authorize Baltimore County Police to provide enforcement of motor vehicle laws in a pilot program in a specific community, townhouse community, which has HOA community, which has asked for this, this traffic enforcement under current state law. Traffic enforcement is not allowed in HOA or condo communities. And so this, again, as amended, and the Senate bill is amended accordingly, the legislation would authorize Baltimore County Police to provide that traffic enforcement. Be happy to answer any questions.
We have a question from Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, is this in the exact same position as the House
That's
bill?
correct, Delegate.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. See you back up here. I think we have Jennifer Alger, who's here for SB 251, Maryland Public Ethics Law, Training and Financial Disclosure Requirements Revisions.
Okay. Hello, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Alger. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland State Ethics Commission, and I'm here in support of the departmental legislation. Senate Bill 251 is a cross-file of House Bill 230, which this committee and the House already have passed unanimously. Senate Bill 251 is the same. It contains the same amendments as the committee has previously passed. So thank you for your consideration of this bill and request a favorable amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on SB 251? Okay, thank you. Anyone here for Senator Rosapeth? Anyone here for Chair Smith? All right, I will present Senate Bill 179. This is a cross-file of a bill introduced by Delegate Griffith to try to treat our unemployable disabled veterans very well by exempting them some motor vehicle fees. Unfortunately, the Transportation Trust Fund is pretty tapped, so the bill did not move through the House. Are there any questions about SB 179? Okay, that concludes SB 179. SB 618, on behalf of Chair Smith, Eric's ID law. We passed this bill. There is a one-word difference between the House and the Senate bill, and I'm sure the chairs of the two committees can work it out amongst themselves. Any questions on SB 618? Okay, that concludes that bill hearing. Is anyone here for Senator Rosapep? Is anyone here for Senator McKay? All right, Senator Rosapep, 3-hour roadway driving, SB 471. I believe this is an identical form to a bill from Delegate Edelson that we passed that was actually requested by the MVA to update the content of the 3-hour program requirement. Any questions? Come on, Delegate Naraki, I know you got something cooking over there. Okay, that concludes bill on SB 471, and I guess we will invite up our witness on SB 711 to speak on behalf of Mike McKay, Off-Highway Recreational Vehicle Recreation Oversight Board Establishment.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony for SB 711. I'm not sure where Senator McKay is, but kill me, huh? I got it. I got it. We're all set. How about that timing? Have a seat. Very good.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me my tardiness, sir. All right. Mr. Chair, members, Environmental Transportation. For the record, Senator Mike McKay, representing Appalachia, Maryland. Senate Bill 711 is a reintroduction of a legislation that I sponsored last year, creating an oversight board for the OHV Title Tax Fund. The creation of this oversight board, as written, is common among DNR funds designated for special purposes. The OHV, or the Off-Highway Vehicle Tax Fund, is a main funding mechanism for the OHV trail creation and maintenance, and is solely funded through the sales of OHV vehicles. As such, the users should have a seat at the table with DNR to ensure that our voices are heard. This is the way the funding from the tax fund and input has for the funding spent to ensure that they're getting the kind of access that they desire. Now, this legislation actually also expands the use of the fund to help with the general park maintenance. Currently, funds can only be used for creation and maintaining trails, and this legislation will allow DNR to build out camps as well as parking lots and amenities for the special funding limits. This will allow the OHV users to be almost entirely self-funded and their own access, at the same time relieving some of the burden of DNR's general fund in building out these facilities. Now, the department has submitted some amendments. The Senate did pass those amendments, and the bill, as amended in front of you, does have DNR support. And I ask for a favorable recommendation. If there's any questions, I can answer. I'm sure that Delegate Siliberti will answer them for me. No. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is Steve Linsenmeyer, and I'm on the board of Maryland OHV Alliance. We're a 501c3. We're formed in 2013 to facilitate reopening of the state's OHV facilities. Currently, we have St. John's Rock, which is state forest, and Wolf Den Run State Park, both of which are in Garrett County. I had a lot of notes here, but he took them. So I'm just going to provide a few comments
Guilty as charged.
and ask for a favorable consideration. As Senator McKay stated, this is entirely self-funded from the tax that we pay when we purchase a vehicle. And currently, we're working and have always worked closely with the leadership of DNR, state, forest, and parks, local communities, local businesses, and have done so continuously for the last 13 years, and it's been successful. It's important to note that these two parks alone raise about $2.5 million annually for the economy, and we've seen about 10,000 visitors to these state parks since they've opened. And the Maryland OHV Alliance represents more than 15,000 folks who are in the OHV community, Maryland Motorcycle Dealers Association, and their families, all of which support this legislation. So we appreciate a favorable response, and I thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Delegate Lehman.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Could you just briefly describe what kinds of off-highway vehicles you're talking about? Are you talking about ATVs? What is the range of vehicles that this bill covers?
ATVs, but I'm going to let Steve, who's more.
I can't hear you that well.
I'm sorry. I'm going to let Steve answer that question to get down to the specifics of it. But you're correct. Those are the vehicles that we're talking about. You want to explain, please? Expand.
It's from Jeeps, licensed DOT vehicles, Jeeps, side-by-side, which you'll see like a Polaris Ranger with a little stuff in the back, like a utility vehicle, other four-wheel ATVs, two-wheel motorcycles. And that's pretty much the extent of OHV is defined.
And did you mention snowmobiles? Does it include snowmobiles?
So the Maryland OHV Alliance represents hikers and snowmobiles and other motorized. So it's all trails is what we're. So
okay, thank you.
Is included in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you both. Senator, great to see you over here. That concludes our bill hearings. We have a voting session. We will start that at 2:30, so you have about a half hour. So be back here at 2:30 for voting. All right, see you all soon. Thank you.
Oh, no. Thank you, sir. Thanks. Appreciate it.